What's up, everybody? It's Andrea. Today, time and a place, Jules. Data asks the question, am I alone in the universe? And somewhere out there, lore answers, for the last time, no. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the TNG Podcast, the number one place in the Alpha Quadrant to geek out about all things Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm your co-host, Shereese.
Hey, I'm your co-host, Andrea. Happy to be back. We are breaking down Season 7, Episode 10, Inheritance. This episode was written by Dan Koppel and directed by Robert Scherer. As the Enterprise helps the planet to survive, Lieutenant Commander Data must work with two local scientists from the planet. One of the scientists seems particularly interested in Data. Spoiler alert, it's his mom. It's his mom. That's like the whole episode. It's
so now
his
you don't
mom.
even need to watch it because that's really the meat right there.
That is the whole episode.
Yeah.
Right?
So working with two scientists, it's a bit of a stretch. It's like 1.5 scientists.
At that.
Because Data's
like
mom,
a scientist and her sidekick husband?
Yes, her sidekick husband, who is a scientist also, but his only contribution is to say that he doesn't trust Data because he's a machine.
Yeah.
So, like, is he really helping? I don't know. And then there are some other random scientists, some extras, scientists in the background running around and pushing buttons, but we don't see a lot of them.
No. And it really just is like Data meets his mom. And this is really what Season 7 is all about. It's all about the family connection.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, we've already had Geordi's mom go missing. Now it's Data's mom episode. And then we're going to have, the Beverly ghost sex grandma thing, which is so freaking weird to me.
We are going to get to meet her,
so bizarre.
Her ghost grandma.
Yeah. So it's just, this is like Season 7 is the family season.
We have Worf introducing his half brother to all of us, which we did not know was a person
or care about.
Season 7.
Yep.
We've got, who else do we have? We have Picard meeting a long lost son. So that's a thing. Yeah. Do you remember that episode? It's not good.
No.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember it a lot. All I remember was that it was not good. That's all I remember about the episode. So maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I'm not much of a Season 7 person anyway, just because it's a lot of like wrapping up storylines. Too close to the ending for me.
Introducing storylines that we didn't ever want to know.
Yeah.
I almost feel like all this family stuff.
Michael Dorn was like, everybody else gets a family episode. Why don't I? And they're like, buddy, you've had Alexander this whole ass time feeding him ghost peppers and mini marshmallows. What more family do you need?
He did have some good family episodes. He had a couple with Alexander and he had a couple with his brother that I felt like were good because they were.
Yeah, we're good on you, Worf. We had more family from Worf than anybody else put together.
Well, and they were great because they were bigger than Worf. It was like meeting Kalar was wonderful. And then getting Alexander and you're like, what? I know she didn't. And then like there was a lot. And then meeting his brother and what's going on with the Empire, there's a whole bunch, which I feel like we don't get all of those nuances with literally any other character where we get to see a bigger picture, except for Troy and her mom, but where we get to see like, oh, this is like their role in Starfleet or not in Starfleet. And this is how it affects other cultures or not. Like, some more stuff that we got with Worf over the seasons. I kind of would have liked all this family stuff to maybe be in Season 3 or something to give us some more space, some more runway to like develop a reason to care about their siblings and stuff.
Yeah, like the ghost sex grandma could have been like definitely sounds like a Season 1 thing. And then we could have had like Worf's family crap in like Season 2 and 4, and then like Geordi's family, like an episode in Season 5. But it all just Season 7 is like, what's the name of the game? Family. And you're like, oh, that was the team cheer for Season 7. All right, fine.
And I actually don't think I would have minded if the episodes were more interesting. So
yeah, they're just not. They're not. Like,
they're not, and that's what makes it painful.
Well, let's go into initial thoughts then, because my initial thoughts were, I remember liking this episode, and I particularly like the duet scene and that plot twist that we're going to get to see in a little bit. But that was kind of it. What about you? What were your initial thoughts on this episode? Very
similarly, I remember loving the twist ending. And that's like my biggest takeaway from this episode was always like, oh my gosh, Data meets his mom. And, like the twist at the end. But I also kind of remembered it being a slow episode. And I was like, but maybe I'm misremembering that. But when I finished the episode, I was like, nope, I remembered that accurately. That was correct. Those memories of it's a slow episode with a great twist ending, but not really worth watching the episode to get the twist ending.
No. So we can break that down for you a little bit at the end. But yeah, I mean, my final thoughts were kind of the same as yours, I would say. It was a very slow episode with that whole planetary thing was just such a MacGuffin. It was like, okay, like nobody really cares. Nobody's seriously impacted. The Enterprise, usually when the Enterprise is called to like save a planet from some sort of environmental destruction, they try a few things. Everything seems like it's going right. And then at the last second, the phase discriminator blows out or something. And then they create a bigger problem than they even came to solve. And then they have to like do some magic to like fix their fuck up and the original issue. This was not it. It was like, help, the planet's in need. Well, what if we just drill some holes and relieve some pressure and like re-warm up the magma? Okay, let's try that. All right, we're ready to try it. Okay, it worked.
Yeah. And also
episode, you're like, oh, there wasn't even like a fuck up anywhere in there.
Yeah, like the stakes were that they only had 13 months before this planet was uninhabitable. And I was like, well, that's a big deal. You waited till 13 months to go to call for help. What the? Y'all didn't know this was happening like years and years and years ago? I mean,
has the inner light showed us nothing? Picard living his life in the probe. They knew for like 4 decades that things were going sideways.
Yeah.
Come on.
And here they're like 13 months into it and they're like, we need your help. So, I mean, I guess they could have waited till 3 months, but there were stakes, but then there was one like, oh no, something moved and we have to go down to the planet to fix it. So that did happen, but it was very much it was a throwaway. It was very much like, we need conflict between these characters in this moment. So let's just say one of the machines got knocked over. Okay.
Yeah. Like it really was very much like, okay, guys, we've written the episode. It looks good. Everybody likes it. Oh shoot. The timer came back and said, we're 7 minutes short. So what do we think they should do for 7 minutes? Like, that's totally what it was.
We did need that scene in order to get the twist. We wouldn't have gotten it any other way. But yeah, we can just get into it. The basically that's it. Like,
anyway, that's the whole episode. Really.
Yeah, there's no big stakes. We're not really drawn into caring about this planet, learning about this planet, learning about the people on this planet. It actually reminds me of, and I know I just said we're going to get started, and we're not. It reminds me of Pen Pals. Remember, Pen Pals was all about that planet that was like dying from like the lava and whatever. And Data was like talking to the little girl and was like, oh my gosh, their planet's going to be destroyed. Maybe we can save them and all these things. We see this planet for like a hot second, but I remember being really invested in this planet. Like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Like this little girl is talking about how scary everything is and the earthquakes and the fire. Yeah. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, is there anything we can do to help them? Like I was really drawn into that planetary crisis. And then there's been a million other crises where it's been like, oh yeah, we need to get this, cure over there because the virus is like killing everybody. So as long as we get it there, Warp 4 should be good. As long as we get there by like in the next 72 hours, we can save the planet. So there's planetary crisis where I'm really engaged. And then there's other ones where it's very much an afterthought. This one feels more like the afterthought-y type thing than like, I'm really concerned, like as alongside Data meets his mom, and that's great. I'm really concerned about this planet and I definitely want them to win and I want them to fix it and I want them to help them. Yeah. None of that was inspired in this episode.
Well, I think the reason that you felt more drawn into Sarjenka's planet's plight in Pen Pals is because they actually showed like this little village being like firebombed by like balls of lava coming down from like volcanoes and shit. You know what I mean? Like you see stakes, you see damage, you see innocent people. When things are talked about from a higher altitude, I mean, literally and figuratively, like when you're on the ship talking about this culture is going to be decimated if we don't have the vaccine, but we've got it and we're on our way, so everything will be fine. Like when things are spoken from the like problem solver's point of view, it really feels difficult to like invest. But like you see little Sarjenka like running in to grab her radio so she could talk to Data because he's her only friend, and like, her little village is all full of destroyed buildings and shit. It's like, oh my God, this is way more real than like we're just talking about stuff in the observation lounge where it's like, we're going to drill some holes, everything will be fine. So here's what's going on. The Atrian government, super cool name.
Such a great name.
I know. Has such a great name. Has contacted the Enterprise for help with their dying planet. So the gravitation field has changed. The planet is cooling at a rate that will render it uninhabitable in as little as 13 months. So we've got this elderly like husband and wife team, and the woman is Dr. Juliana Tanner. She is beautiful, by the way. That actress is so stunning. And her husband is Atrian. He's got like the monster makeup, the like alien ears and stuff. We only hear a few lines from him, so who even cares? But Data
the makeup is great. Like,
the makeup is great.
Good enough to not, like, it barely drew my eye.
Yeah.
Because it was so seamless.
Yes. This was no too short a season with like the head 5 sizes too big, where you're like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy?
You guys have to watch that episode just to see how big
he's got like a balloon head. He's got like a fucking balloon head.
It's like a bowling ball. With a little wig on top.
It reminds me of So You Married an Axe Murderer, where it's like his head looks like an orange on a toothpick. Like it's got a gravitational pull. His head was so big. They're like, how do we olden this dude up? I don't know. Put about 17 layers of silicone on his head. And then
throw some liver spots and some wrinkles. That looks good. Yeah. That looks good to me. And from a distance, maybe it too. Anyways.
Maybe in 1987.
Maybe, but yeah, so this makeup was good enough to like I barely even noticed it. That's how good it was.
Noticed that dude. Yeah.
And they're chit-chatting, and very quickly Geordi comes up with the whole solution to save the planet. So we got nothing to worry about. We're just gonna drill some holes, we're gonna reheat the magma in the core of the earth, and then it'll just like perpetually stay heated for like a long time. So it's pretty straightforward. They're like, we're just going to like pinpoint, which holes we need because they have to be at certain spots on the planet and we'll be good. So we're like, cool, we're done with that. So as everybody's like, and break, and they all leave to go do whatever they need to do, Dr. Tainer kind of holds Data back and is like, you don't remember me? And he's like, no, should I remember you?
Like, do you know who I am? Are you a celebrity? I don't know you.
No, I mean, well, actually, he's like, yes, you're Dr. Juliana Tainer. I know that. Right. And he's just like, she's like, well, I'm your mother. And I wrote time and a place, Jules. Time and a place. Like
Jules.
Yeah, that's what I put in my notes. I was like, time and a place, Jules. This was not it. Wait till after the meeting in the observation lounge to be like, I'm your mother.
Yeah. She didn't quite say it that straightforward, but she practically did, because she was like, well, I was an associate of Dr. Soong's. I helped make you. Also, I was married to him. So I guess in a way that makes me your mom. Anyway, are we going to the mother-son dance later? Like, she really dropped it at a very bad time. And you're like, lady, what? Yeah.
I felt like this deserved a message before you got on the ship or something. Like, I don't know. This was weird. I mean, thankfully it was Data. So Data of all people is just like, interesting. Versus somebody else would probably be like, what? It would totally throw off everything that they were planning. But I just thought, like, time and a place. This didn't feel like appropriate for any of that.
The reason that I had no problem at all just saying, like, spoiler alert, it's his mom in the little plot synopsis rundown, is because she dropped this bomb on him before the commercial break.
Yeah.
Dang.
Within the first 2.5 minutes of the episode.
Nothing at all. She was like, I'm your mom. Who's your daddy? I'm your mommy. So in 10 forward after credits, Data says he has no memory of her. And she's like, well, it's because they wiped his processors after they finished refining his programming. And Mom has the cutest little way of describing Data's early life as a childhood. And I was like, could you imagine little Data as a child? It must be so cute. And like the way that she kind of talked about how like he was like a child, he was, 100-kilogram child, but he was still a child. Like he had to learn about the whole world around him, like very quickly. Now, Juliana said that she and Noonien Soong wed in secret as her mother disapproved of his eccentric ways and the fact that he had like several decades over her. Then when they fled the crystalline entity, they ended up on a remote planet in the middle of nowhere and no one else to talk to. And it just wasn't enough for her because he was as in love with his work as he was with her, maybe more so. And so he just didn't make time for her ever. And she was like, okay, this is going to be a one-sided love and I'm not doing that. And she laughed. And I was like, good for you, girl. Good for you.
And what she also says is
all this long-suffering wife bullshit.
Yeah.
No, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
Life is too short.
Especially not in the 24th century. Like, what are we doing? It's not like the age where like the long-suffering wife like stereotype was birthed out of necessity when women had no rights and could own no property and could get no work.
And had no agency or choices. Yeah.
And they could not support themselves without a man. So yes, if you have somebody to make sure that you eat and have a roof over your head, you might, but you have no love or it's a toxic, awful relationship, you will be the long-suffering wife because you have to. But those days are long gone, way long gone. So certainly by the 24th century, it's like, no, like if you really are more in love with your work than me, I'm going to leave you to your work. And it's not like she stopped loving him. It's just that wasn't enough for her. So not only did she end up leaving Dr. Soong, she also left Data. So she tells him, like, we were going to take you, but the escape pod only had two spots, and we had to leave very quickly because the crystalline entity was like raining down destruction on everybody.
By the way, Lore freaking invited. So
before they deactivated and dismantled him. So she was just like, I felt so guilty. That's why I haven't come to you before, because Data's like, why are you waiting until now to reach out to me?
Why are you waiting until season 7, by the way?
Seriously, if we had not come, if when you asked for help, it wasn't the Enterprise that came, would you have ever reached out? And she was just like, well, I felt guilty for leaving you. That's why I didn't reach out, but I couldn't have taken you with me because of the crystalline entity, blah, blah, blah. So you're like, okay. And Data's just like super sus, and good for him. He doesn't, the fact that he's a machine doesn't mean that he just buys any story anyone tells him.
This is actually something I liked about the episode. I'm so sorry. I cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I was like, wait, hold on. I just realized I totally interrupted you. I'm sorry. Data is making these like vaguely disturbed faces the entire time she's talking. And she puts her hand on his hand and she's like, well, what matters is that we're here now and I want to get to know you. Data, my son. Data, so he kind of pulls his hand out from under hers and he says, I'd like to corroborate your story before we take this any further. And I want to say that I feel like this is growth from Data, because early seasons Data would be like, you have more information about my origin or anything, like tell me everything right away. And I need to know, and it doesn't matter. And I think now he's a little bit more human about it, where it's he's like, not as naive. Yes. And God damn it, Brent Spiner. A standing round of applause for him, because look at how you can play. I mean, an android, it's just a fancy word for a robot. Like, he's a robot, right? He's very robotic in season 1 and 2 and 3, but he starts to grow, and look at him in season 7. Like, he's still a robot and his growth has been immeasurable, but also imperceptible. Until a moment like this where you're like, oh, look at the difference of what he would have done in season 1 as opposed to now, where he's just a little bit more cautious about it.
You're absolutely right, because I think it's season 2, the schizoid man, when he meets his grandpa, right? The guy who trained Noonien Soong, that guy was like, you might as well say that I'm your grandpa. Go ahead and call me grandpa. And the Data's like, all right, grandpa. Like, he had no questions, 0 questions.
Nothing.
He was like, you said you're my grandpa, you're my grandpa. But here she's all like, I'm your mother and you were such a cute child. And, every time he asks a question, like,
and
well,
he's making
why?
like ick faces.
Yes. And he's like, well, wait a minute. I was programmed with all of the journals for all the colonists and your name wasn't even there. Or he goes, your name was there, but it was Juliana O'Donnell. It wasn't Soong. And then she was like, oh yeah, but we were married. It was just a secret. So that's why my name was different. He's like, okay, but why was it never mentioned you were married? Oh, because the marriage was a secret. Why was it? It's like every time you had a question, just like the littlest bit of clarification, she was ready with an answer that was like, well, you can possibly verify that information. You know what I mean? So the fact that he even asked is growth. And the fact that he paused and went, okay, well, let me verify this before.
Yeah, he wasn't like, okay, mom. Yeah,
he wasn't like, okay, mom, the way he was like, okay, grandpa. So that was great and wise.
Right. Yeah. So Data does do some digging. He finds some passenger information about his mom and dad going to Nervala 4. That's where she said they were secretly married. And Geordi's like, okay, well, I guess that proves it. Data's like, well, just because she was on the passenger manifest doesn't prove that they were married.
Because all of the documents were destroyed in a fire or whatever. So it's like
something or a flood or whatever.
Yeah. You can't verify it. You just can't.
So Geordi points out that like Juliana left Noonien. Like, it's possible he just didn't want to talk about her, which I totally understand. There are things I don't want to talk about with people, right? And like, that could be one of those types of things.
That was another question Data had, was like, well, why did my dad ever mention her? Like, no one has ever mentioned her. She's not in the journals. She's not in my records. She's not in my memories. And my dad never mentioned her. So,
well, see, if you think about too, like, it would make sense that Noonien wouldn't ever mention her, because I imagine he felt that it was his failing, that led to her leaving. Like, if he wasn't so obsessed with his work and actually paid attention to your spouse, which people, you do need to do that. I don't care how tied up with your work you are. You need to pay attention to your spouse, or otherwise, they'll be unhappy and they can leave, that kind of stuff. Like, he felt responsible for her leaving, and he was. So, for her to say it was a very difficult decision that I had to make to leave him, I totally understand that. And I have lived with that. Right. But for him to say like, it was because of me that things ended, he had much more reason to never want to speak about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Geordi points out, because Data's just like, well, there's just no verification. And Geordi's just like, it sounds like you're stalling, right? He's just like, why would anyone lie about something like this? Why would anyone lie and pretend to be your mother? And Data's like, I don't know, but maybe she is. I don't know. And Geordi's just like, look, didn't your dad give you that emotions chip? And didn't he say that there were memories tied into it? Maybe those are some of the memories. Maybe there's some memories of your mom in that chip. And the chip, he did wrestle back from Lore, but he's afraid to use it because it turned him into kind of a monster. So he's not using the chip. But Geordi's just saying, like, maybe, once you feel comfortable, you start using it, you start accessing it. Who knows? All kinds of memories about your mom might be in there. And that's kind of what makes Data go, okay, like, I can't verify every single inch of her story, but why would she lie? And maybe there is some record somewhere. And even if there isn't, this is a chance that, Geordi just lost his mother not too long ago. This is a chance that Data can take that he's never had before. So he's kind of like, okay, fine, I'll give it a chance. So now we're back in 10 Forward. Data walks up to Dr. Tainer and he goes, I would like to get to know you better, mother. So then he does.
Mother. Yeah. And so that's kind of a cute moment. And Juliana's like, well, Noonien wanted a boy and I wanted to make you a girl, but Noonien got his way in the most Noonien freaking way possible. He just like came into the house one day with Data's head under his arm and it was made in his fashion, like in his model and his likeness. Image. And I was like, and I was like, what the really?
I think it can
That's
be
so
narcissistic.
Fucking narcissistic.
So I think sometimes it can be narcissistic when people name their kids after themselves, but I don't think that is the majority of the case at all. Like, I think a lot of times names have a meaning, even if it's just like, it was a really pretty name that made me happy. So I wanted you to have this name because it made me happy. Or like my friend's named after his mom was a teacher and he's named after his mom's favorite student, like most favorite student. Like, I think a lot of names are meaningful and special. But yeah, in this case, Noonien Soong, I think we can all agree, is a raging narcissist.
Raging.
So this is not like the average case. This is definitely, he's got some issues. Every single clone he makes looks exactly like him. I don't know why this is what melted her heart. Because it's one thing to see a baby, right? Where it's like a mix of both of your DNA and you can be like, oh, my eyes and your cheeks or something. But this is like a straight up copy of him, but painted gold.
Yeah.
No, that wouldn't make me go, we have to build this android.
Right? Well,
but it worked on her.
It worked for her. She was like, okay, fine, I guess. He stops at Counselor Troy's door and Juliana's like, oh, your father would be so pleased. He was worried that your sexual programming wouldn't work. And I don't ever want to hear about it again, ever. I never want to hear about Data's sexual function ever again. Like, ever. We get it. It works. Range of techniques. We got it. Jesus Christ. I'm so sick of Data and I'm so sick of Data's penis. Okay. I just am. So he's like, no, Counselor, she's the ship's counselor. And Mom's like, good night, Data. Like, okay, listen.
Wink, wink.
You've been mom for one day. All right. Anyway, getting back to more important things though. Magma pockets for the infusion are stable. Mom and son have to work on the project. And as they're preparing everything, Juliana starts laughing at some old memories of Data and how he didn't care about any social niceties and how he never wanted to wear clothes or anything. So they had to like program like a modesty subroutine to like make him want to wear clothes, which is so cute. I thought. Now,
I wrote down, wow, she's sharing some really like insufferable baby stories. Because for me, I was just like, I get that you think it was funny and everything. And also like, time and a place, Jules. Like, I don't know why we would ever bring up him running around naked. Like, when is that ever going to be like, oh my God, I shouldn't say it. Oh, should I?
Sexuality was out running loose around the villagers. Stop it. Stop talking about this stuff. She really is the mom. She passes the mom test.
She did. She
really
did.
does. If Data
cute,
ever got married, she'd be like, here's a picture of him naked as a newborn.
Right.
I mean, he looks the same as he does now, of course. Like, it's just so weird.
It's just weird. It's bizarre. And again, maybe it's because I'm not a parent that I don't understand naked babies being shared with people. I don't understand that. But and maybe it's just one of those things I just don't get and I won't get until I'm in that position. But she's sharing little stories and this is kind of a backdrop of everything else that they're doing whenever they're working on the in engineering or like doing anything. She just kind of pops up with these cute little mom stories. And they're ready to like fire the first beam or whatever. And we go to the bridge and Dr. Tanner is like kind of baby ducking Riker. And he's like, someone's double checked Data's calculations, right? Someone's made sure that it's correct. And I just put in my notes, LOL, like someone double checked Data's calculations.
Let's go ahead and have the ship's computer double check the ship's computer's work. Okay.
Exactly. It's like, well, no, a human has to double check it. And I'm like, with much less accuracy and more errors. Get out of here, man. Get out of here.
Your math
clearly don't know how this works. Yeah.
Okay, your one line is done. You're done now. Thank you. Go have a seat, buddy.
I love how Riker comes to bat for Data. And it's just like, there's no one I trust more. Like, he's the man for the job. And then after they do whatever they do and it all works fine.
Yeah.
Riker's just fine. Riker's like, he looks over at Dr. Tanner and is just like, I knew this was going to go, like, it couldn't go any better than it just did, or something like that. He makes it extra clear to be like, yeah, so sit down. And I just like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was
a dumb scene, but I liked seeing Riker stand up for Data. So
yeah, I love that too. Now, mom and son are hanging out in like Data's room, and she's just like looking him up and down, and she's looking at all the like little things around his like quarters and looking at his like paintings and stuff. And she lands on a piece of artwork that's a painting of Lal. And Data tells her the story of Lal and how he made her and how her like neural net wasn't stable and she didn't survive long. And Juliana's like disturbed by this. And I thought that was actually very sweet because she's like, gosh, you were a grandma for a little while, but like never knew it. But like, it was just, she was just saddened by the whole loss of it all. And
well, it's interesting because I thought she was saddened by the loss of it. I thought she was sad that she could have been a grandma, like she could have known she was a grandma before, gotten a chance to see Lal or something. That's what I thought. But later on, she talks to Data and is like, you're not thinking of recreating again, are you? Because you shouldn't create more models because they're not going to last and they're not going to make it. It's really hard to make a stable matrix and it's not worth the pain and all this stuff. And so then I was like, wait, was she sad about the loss of Lal? Or was she really more like, you're carrying on your father's crazy work, which is only going to lead to heartache and turmoil?
Yeah.
So I don't know. But in any case, she's sad. And it's actually really, that moment I thought was really sweet.
Yeah, that was actually super sweet. Now, they start talking about music, and Data says, I'm playing this Handel piece tomorrow at the concert. And she's like, well, it's too bad I don't have a viola. And he's like, well, we can make you one. So he has the computer replicate one. And they end up playing this like absolutely beautiful duet of Handel's music. I don't know which piece in particular it was. I didn't look that up, but it's very, very technical. And I just love that scene when they're playing together so much. And this is
beautiful.
Isn't it beautiful? And this is where she, asks him like, will you ever make another android? Like, it's very risky. She and Noonien had several children before Lore and Data, and none survived until Lore. And they felt that they didn't have the right to like play God and recreate life and lose it again. So that's when we kind of see this. Now the Loaxano train pulls onto the station right at time because here she comes like sobbing and guilt crying. Well, there was room for you in the escape pod. I lied. I didn't want to bring you with us because I was afraid. And sob, fucking sob, and eye roll. And like off she goes. And I was like,
listen, sob, lady. By the way, the sob was Juliana. The eye roll was Andrea. Just for clarification.
Yes, thank you. I just wrote sob, eye roll, sob. Shaky breath.
She breaks down in tears because she admits that she made Soong leave Data because she was so afraid that Data, once they reactivated him, would somehow turn out to be Lore. To be just like she said Lore was evil, which is not wrong. He did call that crystalline entity that you were fleeing from.
Yeah.
Little did you know. And so she just was like, I don't want to go through Lore again. And so she left him and she runs out screaming and crying. And Data's just like, what the heck was that about?
Yeah. So now, and I'm like, girl, this just feels I feel like we need to have Jeffrey back just to talk about the Loaxanas crying in Dark Page, where it's like, help me, you were just a baby. Or it's the same thing. And I don't like those scenes.
Yeah, a lot of histrionics. Here's the thing that I didn't like. Her crying and running out, I was kind of like, whatever. But the thing that I didn't like was the next day in engineering when they were like working side by side.
She's acting like everything's all hunky-dory again?
Yeah, but that didn't bother me as much as the fact that her husband comes to talk to Data to basically reprimand Data for making his mom feel bad. What the sir, if you do not step out of this conversation that you are not at all a part of, that's what bothered me. I didn't care about the sad crying. I was a little bit like, she should say something and not just pretend like it never happened. But I was livid about the guy coming up talking about, Data, your mother told me what she said to you, and she's been very upset, and she's been crying, and and he was just about to be like, you need to like, forgive her or whatever. But before he even got that far,
Dad, you need
to
really step back.
Yeah,
because
this has nothing to do with you,
and so am I. And if she has something to say, she can tell me. And if she doesn't want to say it, it's not your job as her babysitter to come and say, I don't have time for this. Get the fuck out of my engineering. Like, get out.
And by the way, we're trying to save your planet. So if you could take 2 steps to the left.
Again, time and a place.
Yes. Time and a place, whatever your name is.
These two have been married for a while.
Mark, maybe, I don't know.
Neither.
Time and a place, Mark. Time and a place.
With those years, I don't feel like he's a Mark, but you know what? He can be. He can be.
I actually don't think he has a name other than Mr. Tanner. I don't think Tanner. I don't think he has a first name in the episode, actually. But I'm going to call him Mark. So Mark. Oh, actually, he does have a name. His name's Pran. I wrote it in my notes because I put Pran. 2 strikes and you are out. I am over you, Pran. That's what I put in my notes. So that he does have a name.
Remember his name and you wrote it 3 times, like really aggressively.
Yeah, because I wasn't reading that. I wasn't even reading that part of my notes. I was just thinking about the part that irritated me about this whole thing was that he is trying to tell Data how he needs to behave towards Juliana because she was upset about what she said about what she did. What's that to do with Data? What's that to do with Data? Like at all? That to me just really was upsetting. Like talk about no accountability.
This is why I fucking love having Shereese have my back if I'm ever in any kind of altercation, because she will knock the sense into people so hard without ever raising a finger against them. But she will make them feel so small and so dumb for not noticing this thing that was like fucking obvious as hell to her. And it should have been everyone else, but maybe wasn't.
Absolutely should have been. So she cuts him off before Pran can dig himself into a deeper hole. And it's just like, it's okay, Pran. Data understands, I'm sure. And I'm like, what? No accountability, right? And so Data goes, actually, I don't understand. Could you perhaps clarify why you left me on the planet?
This ain't the time. We're trying to drill holes to save your planet.
I mean, I feel like Pran made it the time. He brought the conversation up. Juliana clearly brushed it under the carpet. And Data was like, wait. No, you did not answer any. I didn't even have those questions until you told me. And now you didn't answer the questions. Come on now. And so she's just like not trying to answer. And then he's like, okay, if I was your biological child, your biological offspring, would you have left me? And then she's like, how could I answer that? And then ultimately she's like, no, if you were my biological child, I wouldn't have left you. And he's like, is that because you value biological life more than artificial life? Which is a very, very reasonable question.
Most logical question to ask after her last statement.
Yes, exactly. And then she's like, no, absolutely. That's not why. And then she talks about how painful it was dismantling Lore and how she was terrified that Data would end up just like Lore and she would have to dismantle him too. And she just didn't want to go through the pain of that again. And I feel like that quandary should have been settled before you built Data. Maybe before you turned him on. Maybe before you turned him off, right before you turned him back on. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of checkpoints to say, I don't want to go through this pain again. But she waited until he was all ready to come to life, to be like, peace out, yo. So I don't know. Anyways,
I feel you on that.
Somehow, the problem was solved with this conversation.
Yeah, I guess. Which we're gonna chalk that up 24th century. I don't know. Now, while this is all happening, though, this particle beam starts causing a feedback turbulence issue, and Juliana is like, "Well, let me try to do the calculations."
And Jordy's like, there's no way you can do it in time.
It's going to take seconds. Like days. Yeah, it's going to take days for the ship's computer to try to figure this out. And she's like, boop, 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 and then suddenly the turbulence like stops. And they're like, how'd you do that? And she's like, I must have just gotten lucky and hit the right frequency. And Jordy is looking at her like, what the fuck? And Data's starting to look at her like something is not right here.
So yeah, Jordy's looking at her like, that's kind of weird. And Data's looking at her like, this is not this is unusual, but okay, maybe. Then we go to 10 Forward where we have the recital, which again was beautiful. Like I could literally listen to this all day long. I mean, oh, it was just gorgeous. It was gorgeous. They looked gorgeous. I loved her hair like that. It was so pretty.
I loved her hair down. She is such a beauty.
She's really stunning, yeah.
She is very stunning. And this woman is old enough to be Data's mom, you know, so she's got to be in her 60s, 70s, something at least. Maybe
who knows? But let me just say, she aged a lot better than.
I mean, yeah,
than Soon did.
Yeah, she sure as shit did. But that's also the thing too, though. It's like I never want to say like she looks beautiful for a woman of her age. She just looks beautiful.
Yeah, she just looks beautiful. She just looks beautiful, which, you know, is Hollywood. They're always casting very beautiful people, and they did not disappoint with this role. So next thing you know, like the piece was played, and at the end of the piece, when everyone's like, bravo, bravo, Data's looking at her all sideways again, and you're like, okay. And then the next scene, we're in sickbay, and Data's like asking Dr. Crusher, can you run my mother's medical records? And Beverly's like, I could, but why? And Data's just like, please don't ask me to explain why. I don't want to tell you all the details. Just trust me that, or he doesn't say just trust me. He says, I have reason to believe that she's not who she says she is. And then you're like, oh, wait, this goes back to the beginning where he didn't trust her in the first place. So then you're like, what, is she an imposter? She's not really Juliana? She's not really his mom? Like, what exactly do you mean? And to that, Beverly responds with, yeah, okay.
Like, I trust you. All right.
We can just request anyone's medical records, like whenever we feel like.
Right.
Okay.
Isn't that strange? Right. And then is this the next scene where they end up in the cave?
Yeah. And while he's in sickbay, right about to get his little android hands on his mother's data files, Riker comes over and says, there's been a problem in one of the caves. A pocket's about to collapse. There's a bunch of like earthquakes or something, and you have to fix it. For some reason, it can only be you. So Data runs through the transporter room. Mom's in the transporter room. The two of them are the only people in the universe who could solve this. So they both beam down to the planet, and now we see them in the cave, and they're working on this big piece of machinery, and Data's like looking at all the little beads of sweat on Juliana's skin and stuff, and you're like, okay, why is he staring at her sweat? But I don't know, he is. And they're working on it. And they need to finish installing these units or whatever, but all these little quakes keep happening. So they're like, I didn't even make notes on this because they're just kind of like going through the cave, doing whatever they're doing.
Yeah. They're going through the cave, and all this seismic activity is like right on the very edge of like disaster. And they come back to where they're supposed to be beaming out. And the
it's been like a cave-in or something.
Yeah, there's been a cave-in, and so basically there was like a drop-off. So now they're standing at like this precipice over this huge cliff, and down at the bottom, all scattered on the floor, are the transport pattern enhancers that they need to get out because they're too far below the surface for like just the transporter to like pull them up. So, you know, it's way the hell down there. And Data looks, by the way, he takes his little flashlight and he like looks over to the sides of the cliff and he's like, there's no handholds. And I was like, pause. As a former rock climber, I will tell you, there were a million handholds. What are you talking about, Data?
I thought the same thing. I was just like,
a million effing handholds. I was like, you could, there's a route right there. You could very easily climb down.
I was like, but you only looked like to the right. What about below you? There might just right underneath you. There might be lots of places where you can put your hands and your feet, but whatever. He was like, there's no handholds. We have to jump. And she's like, jump. Are you crazy? I can't jump that
100
far.
fucking feet down. It's so far.
Yeah. Straight from rock onto rock. It's not like you're jumping into water or something. Yeah. So she's like,
marshmallow or some shit.
Yeah. Or delicious marshmallows. And she's like, I can't jump that far. And he's like, yes, you can. Trust me. And he takes her hand and pulls her over, which has to be like the scariest moment of your life when you're falling down 100 feet of cliffside into rock. Yeah. So they land. And Data lands like a cat perfectly on his feet. Juliana lands like on her back or something. And when Data looks over, she's unconscious and her arm is completely off, dislocated completely from her body.
And it's got Android circuitry and chips in it. And it was all blinking and shit. And I was like, oh, she's an android.
And so you're like, what I thought to myself was, I was like, I wonder if Data would have told her she was an android before they jumped, if she would have landed on her feet.
That's what I thought too. I was like, is it because she doesn't know she's an android, so she didn't think to act like an android.
Right. So she didn't think I can make this and I can land on my feet. Instead, she thought I'm going to fall and get hurt. And she did.
This gotcha moment still getches me 35 years later. Like my reaction was as big as it just was, embarrassingly, on the microphone. But like, this is how I felt watching it, where I was like, oh my God, like knowing full well she's an android, already having seen this episode a million times, still getches me every time.
It's great because you're like, wait, what? That's what Data meant by I didn't think I don't think she is who she said she is. Because I'm thinking like imposter, like alien, like shapeshifter, mind control, stuff we've seen before. But this was kind of a surprise, but also made all the sense in the world. You're like, okay, she would be an android, but like the most lifelike android ever seen anywhere. So next thing you know, we're in sickbay and both Geordi and Beverly are looking over.
Love this.
Juliana now.
Love to see this so much because she's the perfect blend of both. And Beverly is always there when Data needs like major stuff like that.
Beverly is always there because it's like these, even though it's all synthetic systems, because they are pretending to be organic systems, there has to be a lot of parallels. And nobody knows more about organic systems than Beverly. Nobody knows more about computer systems than Geordi. So it's a perfect combination. They're both there kind of scanning everything about Juliana, and they find out that she has like tear ducts. She has like, capillaries right on the edge of her skin. I mean, everything about her is so human. And they were like, how did we not pick this up in all of her scans or when she's transporting and all of that? And Beverly's like, she has a program inside of her that sends out readings as if she is this woman, like the readings of a 60-year-old woman from Atrea or whatever. So, or from Earth living in Atrea. Everything's like matching, which is amazing.
Like even right? Because even like when Beverly was asked by Data, like for her like medical scan, she was like, everything seems normal except for some hypertension. So it's like her system even shows
what would make sense for a woman of her age. So there was no way to know this. If she hadn't fallen, you still would never, ever, ever know that she was an android. And it was amazing. And so Geordi finds this chip in her head because she has the cool,
face panel.
She has a cool face panel, the way that Data has a cool like skull panel or whatever. And Geordi finds this chip and he's like, wait a minute, it looks like this chip carries information and it has a holographic interface. So you could probably just take this to the hologram and run it to interact with the program. So Data takes it to the hologram, which I think is just a really nice touch. I like that. I like that this was a way to get everything explained from Dr. Soong himself, not in a memory, not in a hallucination, but in a holodeck program, in a chip in her brain. Sure. Yeah. That tracks. Yeah. That's exactly where that would be.
Yeah, no, totally. And like he does, it tracks so perfectly. And he does kind of have this beautiful little speech with Data where he was like, there was a real Juliana O'Donnell and she was my wife. And like, I didn't love her enough. And he said, I didn't tell her how much I loved her enough. Like he loved her. He just never told
communicated or expressed it by paying attention to her.
Yeah. And like he feels such like guilt. So she was actually killed with the crystalline entity attack, and like she fell into a coma and died like a few days later. And so he knew like he couldn't live without her. So he like made an android copy of her so that she could still live. Like it just is so heartbreaking that it's like this was the loss. He's like, if my Juliana had lived, like she would have also left me. Like he made her so perfectly. He made her in the exact copy of the original.
Yeah, and he had done these neural scans that he perfected on Omicron Theta. So he had done a neural scan of Juliana, like while she was kind of falling into a coma or whatever. So that way when his android was completely ready, he uploaded the entire neural scans with memories and everything else. So when she opened her eyes, she smiled and was like, oh, it's Noonien. It's like she just thought she was asleep. Like she was waking up from the coma. It was, a really seamless transition. The best android he's made because of the motivation he had, because of the connection. This wasn't him just trying to make another copy of him, but like a stronger version of him, a younger version of him, a version of him that's going to go on forever. Instead, it was trying to create a person he loved to have their own life. And I think that's why she's so real in life. Like, compared to Data and Lore, right? Is like, this is not him being narcissistic. This is him really being selfless. I mean, being selfish because he doesn't want to let her go, but creating her in a way that she has autonomy, that she can leave, that she can make her own choices. So it really came out of a beautiful place. And he was saying, I'm really glad that you're the one. I was hoping, Data, that you would be the one to discover all of this. And I wrote a subroutine just for you to answer your specific questions. So now we know, like, she was real. This woman, as far as she knows, is really his mom. And Sung is just like, I designed her to shut down if the truth ever comes out. But when you put this chip back, she's going to wake up and remember nothing. So he's like, you absolutely have to not burst the bubble that she's synthetic. She needs to be, I programmed her to live a long life so that, and to die naturally and peacefully. So let her have that. And I just thought, dang, you're putting Data in such a tough situation. Like, it would have been better almost if it was somebody else who discovered this and talked to this hologram, because they would probably just honor your wishes. I mean, they might study her. I guess it depends on the person. They might kidnap her and put her in an institute, but they might also just like honor their wishes and be like, okay, I'll just let her go. But for Data, it's like, what a rough situation to be between, you know, and in the very next scene in the observation lounge, he's talking about his options with the bridge crew. And it's like, well, do I honor those wishes and let her live out her life believing that she is Juliana Sung, that she's human, you know, and just let her have her life? Or do I tell her she's an android so that I won't be alone in the universe?
Yeah.
And also she'll have like some new cool abilities that she didn't have before when she knows she's an android.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, maybe he just programmed her not to have the same like superhuman strength and all that kind of stuff. Like, because he didn't want her to know that she was an android. But
I mean, but she would never try, right? She would never try to pick up a car.
True. Why would true. She? Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, it was very, very sweet. So they end up like, you know, putting the chip back in, and she opens up her eyes and she's like, Data. And he chooses to go with like Noonan's request for her. And he says, you know, your arm was broken in the fall, but Dr. Crusher has mended it. Like, you're going to be okay. And he just chooses to let her believe she's human, which I think is so selfless.
Mm-hmm.
It's so selfless.
And there's a lot of back and forth in the observation lounge about pros and cons. And one of the things that Troy says is, by telling her the truth, you would rob her of the one thing you've wanted your whole life, which was to be human. And I think that was kind of the kicker, to be like, I can't do that to somebody else. So yeah, it was very selfless, very beautiful. In the last scene, we see them in the transporter room. The planet's all good now. I guess it's been good, whatever. And Data's like, maybe next time I have shore leave, which is never, I'll come to Atria and we can hang out. And she's like, that would be wonderful. And then Data does leave her with the knowledge that Sung had only one great love, and his only regret was that he never told her how much he cared about her. And I think that was you, which he knows it was her because, you know, he had talked to Sung about it. And so it just really like made her happy. She was like, thank you so much for telling me, take care of yourself, son. And it was very like sweet ending.
So beautiful. I do love it. And like, it's just really lovely that like, I think that Data chose to let her continue living the life that she has is very, very sweet and selfless.
Mm-hmm. And human.
And human. And a way to like honor his father's like love for this woman that he never expressed enough love for.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's a walking love letter to this woman.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's really sweet and beautiful. Anyway, what were your final thoughts on this episode?
Well, my final thoughts were that it was very sweet, but it was very slow. And I didn't feel like there were real stakes. I also didn't feel like there was a real transformation. Like, you know, we see a character that's this way at the beginning, and then at the end they're this other way. And you're like, wow, what a journey. Like, I didn't really feel that. It was just kind of like, whoa, there was a twist. But then it's untwisted. Immediately it's untwisted, right? Like,
I know.
So to me, altogether, it felt like a kind of a throwaway episode. And I was really thinking about it. I was like, what could they have done to make this episode better? Like, what could they have done to really elevate it and make it something that I would be like, oh my gosh, this is one of my favorite episodes. And I had no idea. So I don't know, maybe this was the best it could get, or I'm just not super creative. But those are my final thoughts. Was like, it was sweet, but it was slow, and I won't be adding this to the rewatch. What about you?
I mean, almost exactly the same. It was, those two scenes were really cool. The like violin viola duet.
Yeah.
And
that was great.
and the, twist that mom is an android, like those scenes were great. And I think the very last scene was really sweet, but you're right. It was so slow overall. Like the planet was a MacGuffin, like the plasma infusion has worked and the planet is saved. The end, like that part is like not, it just isn't enough to grab me to like have me do rewatch after rewatch of this one. But like, but it was still fun. I feel like this could have been a really well told, like 20-minute episode.
Yeah. Yeah, it could have been. It could have been. And maybe what we needed was like, I mean, I guess if he told her she was an android, we'd have more meat on the bone because it would be like the aftermath of that. And what does that mean? Or
she like accidentally found out or something, like her leg fell off and she saw the freaking chips or whatever.
Well, Soong said if that ever happens, she just resets, like she just shuts down and then it deletes that memory. So she would not know unless someone actually told her. But I think it's better that she didn't know because her husband obviously does not like androids. So that would make it kind of awkward in their family, in their household, to know that he's been married to one this whole time. So I guess it was for the best, but yeah, this could have been a great
care about that guy's feelings at all.
We don't care about Pran.
What the fuck about Mark? Dude sucks. Now you're like concerned about this guy's discomfort. And
I'm not concerned about
having married an android.
I'm not concerned about his discomfort. I'm saying that because he's so like against androids, that if it came out, he'd be like, "Oh, you're such a, you're an android. You're a machine." Like he would just like turn on her, and she would really she'd really be alone, because she's the only android besides Data, and even her husband is like a total dick now, which he always was, but now we know, you know. So. Anyways, I'm not concerned about his feelings. I think he'll be just fine. But her, on the other hand...
And if he isn't, who cares?
So, I don't know. That's, I'm done with this.
A skip. I mean, very happy to be done with it. I mean, a few very, very sweet, like, moments, but overall, it's like, meh, back to Pram. That's it.
It's just, this is a skip for me.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for nerding out with us. Next week, we are talking Season 7, Episode 12, Parallels. We can't wait to break it down. Have a great week.
Bye.
Thanks for geeking out with us. Be sure to join the crew at thetngpodcast.com to be the first to know when we do our live shows or host events exclusively for our members. We'll see you next time.